Everyone wants the calling, but few are willing to be healed enough to carry it. Welcome to The Healed Show, where we go deep to restore your foundation through spiritual formation and inner healing. I'm Frances, therapist, pastor, and coach for high-capacity leaders who have done it all, yet still feel undone. Here, we rebuild your inner world with God so you can lead with clarity, strength, and the kind of peace that transforms everyone you lead. Take a breath. Let's begin. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Frances.
It's great to have you back.
It's great to be back.
So we're going to talk about one of your favorite topics today.
Okay.
We're going to talk about romantic relationships in relation to inner healing.
Yeah.
As well as just adjusting how we think about this, like within the church.
Yeah.
So, in your perspective, what does inner healing and dealing with our, for example, our inner child have to do with romantic relationships?
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this today. I feel like I've been doing so much research and having so many conversations about this. Specifically on our inner child, I find that a lot of people nowadays, we go into relationships craving things that our inner child wants. And if we haven't done the work to actually speak to our inner child, to talk to our inner child and to go get that healing, to work through that, we actually take in these unrealistic expectations into our romantic relationships, and it carries this heavy burden on one person. So, for example, one person will go into the relationship feeling like, I never want to be alone, because they went through their childhood feeling like they were completely alone. Even if they were surrounded by people, just this consistent feeling of loneliness was always on them. So then they get with a partner, and every time this partner wants to leave for a trip, anytime this partner denies this person spending time for whatever reason, they may say, I'm hanging out with my friends or anything like that, we'll find that there's this great friction of, oh, if you're not spending time with me 24/7, that means that you don't like me, you don't love me, I'm feeling rejected.
Yeah.
And we think these feelings are just because, like, oh, I'm a girl, so I just require more attention, or we'll think, you know, partners are supposed to be together 24/7, so this is just a normal thing. When it's actually our unresolved issues of our inner child coming out.
Yeah. So it sounds like that would basically be like an abandonment wound.
Yeah.
And like trying to get that met in a partner.
Yeah.
So do you have any personal examples of how your inner child comes up in your life and kind of what happens as a result?
Yeah, I actually just had to go and sit down with my inner child, because recently, within the past few years, I was having a little bit of trouble in my friendships. So I had one friendship that ended pretty abruptly for me. And out of nowhere, I started missing an ex really, really badly. And it was to the point where I would wake up in the morning and I would think about them. I would go to sleep thinking about them. I was praying for them. And I did not know why I so badly craved this ex, to a point that I never had before. Until one day I decided to go in and sat down with my inner child, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And the specific story with this ex was, he really didn't do anything wrong. Like, obviously he made mistakes, he's a human being, but our relationship didn't end because necessarily someone did something wrong, and there was things that we couldn't work out. The one thing we couldn't work out, which is the thing we can never work out, was I became Christian and he's still not a Christian.
Yeah.
Right? So that was our big thing, and I was the one who ended the relationship. So when when I was talking to my inner child about this, she was like, I just want someone who's not going to leave. So far, it just seems like everyone's leaving consistently. So I just want to go back to this one person that's not going to leave, right? And then I was able to, in that moment, invite Jesus in, have more conversations, and to do that inner healing and to do that inner work in order to continue on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just one of the ways how my inner child peaked out, specifically in the romantic sense.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like all the needs that we didn't get met in childhood, people will want those in a romantic partner, but that will actually be a cause for probably a lot of suffering in that relationship because they're legitimate needs, but we're not meant to get those needs met like in another person in a romantic relationship. So how do you think we've gotten this wrong in terms of like the church and church culture and what's encouraged? Because you hear just get married really young and you're treated like a second-class citizen as a single person. And it's like one of the main things that people want is to get married.
Yeah, I think that our biggest thing as a church is that well, at least for the North American church, which is a church we're both in, I think our biggest problem is that we're more interested in building up kingdom marriages than kingdom people. And that if we don't focus on building up kingdom people, we're not going to have good kingdom marriages, right? And what I mean by that is something one of my pastors told me when I turned 18 was he was my mentor. I was becoming a youth leader, and he looked at me and he said, "You're 18, you're single now, and there's nothing or no one that you have to worry about." He said, "Do everything." And when he was talking about do everything, he was like, see how long you can go with, see how long you can fast for, see how much hours you can pray for, see all these different things. He was like, basically discover yourself in the healthiest way that you can, so that when you are one day married and you have kids, that you know certain limits about yourself already, right? And I think that that's something that I've really taken to heart and something I've really invested in myself in. But the problem is that there is this external pressure that, as someone who doesn't have the internal pressure of getting married, I can still feel the external pressure of getting married and getting married young. And even when I talk about, you know, not being necessarily ready to get married yet and all that kind of stuff, people almost try to incite this fear of, well, if you don't do it now, then it'll never happen.
Right.
Or if you don't do it now, then when will you do it? Because you don't want to end up 40 and single. Or you don't want to end up not being able to have kids. And we put all of these irrational fears into people because of our own bias within living in this society and our own bias within living in this part of the world, because we can see that there's an attack on marriage, obviously, from the world, especially godly marriages. So I think the church is trying to counteract that, but the effects that we're getting are actually really bad, because what the church is supposed to do is the church is just supposed to simply stand for righteousness and stand for justice and truth and holiness. But what we're doing instead is we're trying to attack against, and we're putting the pressure on our own soldiers to do something and run into something and rush into something that's supposed to be forever, with them having very little time to themselves. So I tell people all the time, like, if you are somebody who's like 20, 21, 22, and you want to get married, I love that for you. But I just have so many questions before you do that. It's like, hey, you want to get married? Okay, do you understand yourself, how you handle conflict? How you handle stress? Okay, do you understand yourself, what God is calling you to? I meet so many 20-year-olds and I talk to them and I'm like, hey, like, what do you feel called to? Because you don't have to work at a church to be involved in ministry. Everyone's called to a certain ministry. And they'll be like, oh, I'm waiting until I get married to figure that out. Or I'll be like, oh, what do you want to do for work? And they're like, you know, I want to figure out first what my husband or what my wife does and then figure it out from there. So I feel like the church, by encouraging people to get married young and put so much focus on that, it encourages people to act like their life is on pause and it doesn't exist until they do get married. And that's where we get single people being treated as that second-class citizen. Of, oh, you're single, so you should be available for every single thing we call you for, which oftentimes happens to single people. Or, oh, you're single, so you don't understand how hard life is because you don't have a spouse or kids and such like that, right? We don't do a good job of nurturing our single people because we're so focused on just our married people and our families.
you've alluded to, not everyone's ready to get married. And so for you, like, how would you know if you're ready to be married, or how would you advise, like, the people that you mentor?
For me, I always say, I don't think I'll ever be fully ready. I think marriage is one of those things that once you're in it, and then it's like you just figure it out from there, because I think your single self kind of like dies in a way when you get into marriage and you're forming your life with somebody. But the basic things I always tell people to do is, number one, figure yourself out financially, which is not something that we really encourage too much in the church for more women. Something we really talk about for men. But I do believe, as a woman of God, taking care of yourself is a pretty solid responsibility, and it teaches you a lot to be out in the workforce and everything like that. For me, the big thing I look at first is financial stability. I think that anybody who's in Christ should, before you start looking at, dream life, family, and everything, you should start yourself off on a good financial basis, looking at what your savings account looks like, looking at what your credit looks like, all of these things, because they majorly impact you as you go throughout life. The second thing is your emotional health. Now, a lot of people really focus on their spiritual health when they're thinking about marriage. They think about like how much they're reading their Bible and all these kind of things. But I personally believe you can only go as far spiritually as you actually are emotionally. I think emotional intelligence is something that we lack greatly in this generation, where we really don't talk to each other and we spend a lot of time on our phones and on our screens. So I think understanding who you are emotionally and understanding what you need emotionally and why you need those needs and how those needs can be met, and if those needs are needs that you get in a marriage or if they're actually just from God. Because I find that oftentimes when I talk to single people, when I talk to dating couples, a lot of times what they feel like they need from their partner is actually just something that comes from God. And I think my third thing is being confident in who you are as a child of God. And I find that that is something that is so rare, and I think it's so sad that people just don't understand who they are in Jesus and who God's created them to be. And I think that if you don't understand what God's called you to, if you don't understand how you are called to be a Christian and reflect the faith within yourself, I don't think it's a good time to be looking for marriage or to even get into a dating relationship until you can really solidify that in yourself, or else you're gonna go be with somebody and then get completely consumed into them, and then everything that God's called you to is now all up to this other person in a sense, because you didn't spend enough time consummating who you are with him. So yeah, those are a few of the things I look at.
Yeah, so it's about being stable financially, spiritually, emotionally, and be like thriving as a single person if you want to thrive in a marriage.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the biggest things, especially for me as a woman, and when I'm talking to my girlfriends, is that's one of the things I really encourage them, because when we look at TV and media, I don't know if you experienced this too growing up, but I found that the theme of the guy saving the girl had kind of turned over time. Like at first it was like the guy physically saving the girl, like coming in, beating up the dragon, but now I find that TV shows, the girl's always like broken in some sense of form, whether she comes from an abusive home, whether it's like depression, something of that sort, and then this guy comes and it's like, oh, I'll love you anyways, I love you and you're broken. So I find that a lot of times as well, sometimes we kind of stay broken and we want someone else to come in and heal our broken. And Jesus is like, no, I can come in and heal your broken. And I can come in and I can fix and I can heal those things. But we're like, oh God, I'm waiting for my husband, I'm waiting for my wife to come and do that. And Jesus is like, no, like this is my job. And then that's why I think, again, that pressure comes onto that other person of like, okay, I don't get just to be boyfriend or girlfriend. I have to be parent because you didn't have a good parent growing up. I have to be sibling because you were an only child and you felt incredibly alone. I have to be therapist because you don't want to go to therapy because you can just talk to me. I have to be your friend because none of your friendships are working out because you haven't healed within yourself, right? So all these things I feel like you really, really, really need to look at before you even start to consider marriage.
It's like a pretty dangerous thing when the dynamic in a romantic or in a marriage is where one person is sort of parenting the other, and that was never meant to happen. And in fact, that can like absolutely kill attraction too, when you feel like it's just another child you have to take care of. And initially, when we are attracted to certain people, it's actually connected to what feels familiar for us. For example, someone who grows up with an emotionally unavailable father will be attracted to, and sometimes intensely attracted to, they don't even know it, but someone who is emotionally unavailable. But on the surface can be super charming and seem extroverted and like they're the life of the party, but if you were to get really close to them, it would be like the same emotional frequency as their dad. And I'm just wondering about your thoughts about that, about attraction and our inner child.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the first things I did after I started going to therapy, I have a great therapist, I love therapy, I recommend everyone to get it, was I started identifying my markers and my parents. So I started identifying what is it about them that I really like and what is it about them that I really don't like. And then how is that represented in me, and then how has that been represented in my dating history. So I actually have pretty decent dating history for someone in there who's like 23. So I was like, how was that reflected in my exes? What was I looking for? What was I going for? Right? And I started touching on those things so I could start seeking out God for those things, and so God could validate me in those things. So one of the things that my inner child really, really struggles with is receiving positive attention, right? I find that growing up, a lot of times when I did good things, I was the good girl. So it was like, yes, the good girl does good things.
Right.
So I remember being 10 years old, and I where I'm from, we have like books, and in your books you write down in your book every day, and then you get marked on your book based on like how well you do. And I remember one day going up to my bio dad, and I ran up to him and I was like, here is my book, and I got a 2 out of 10 on this. And it was the only 2 out of 10. Everything else was 90%. I think I might have just not been feeling well that day. But I made sure I specifically looked for the 2 out of 10 because I thought it would give me more attention. So then, coming into my adult life, coming into myself as a grown-up, I started noticing that when I would get into romantic relationships, I would actually become my worst self. So I would dress the worst I had dressed. I would just be on my worst behavior with this person. And I didn't understand for the longest time why, until I went to my inner child, and they were like, when I sat down with her, she was like, people will like you more when you're worse. And I was like, what makes you think people like you more? And she's like, because they'll talk to you more. Because I have a brother who was like that naturally. He just had a lot of behavioral issues, very, very much. So my mom was always talking to him. My mom was always talking to him one-on-one. We had family members that would come and talk to him, family members that would visit him at school, teachers. I remember one time they flew in someone to come and talk to him. I think that person was a therapist. And he just had all of the attention on him. And anytime he did a good thing, he was praised for it. So that's what I wanted. So then, also growing up, when I was seeking out attraction in people, one thing I noticed that's like a pattern with a lot of my exes is that a lot of my exes are fixers. Like, in terms of, I'm going to come in and I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to essentially fix you in a sense, which is why I would go on my worst behavior and they would become the fixer. because I thought that that's what kept them to me. I thought that that's what kept them close to me, and I liked that they wanted to fix me, and I wanted to want to be fixed. I say all of that to say that our inner child is really a lot of time when we're not healed and the work isn't being done, our inner child is really the thing that's pushing our attractions, because oftentimes we don't really understand the difference between when we're being attracted to somebody versus when we're strongly desiring somebody. Which those two things, strong desire could sometimes be attached to attraction, but it shouldn't be confused.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, in my case, like I said, I was looking for that fixer, right? So in looking for that fixer, which was the only time I received attention, that's because my inner child wants attention. So it feels like if I am something fixable, I'm going to attract that fixer, and that is the combination that a lot of people fall into. I feel like that's the most common toxic combination for a couple. So yeah, that's how I think that those two things relate, is because we have these strong desires build up, and it makes us really, really think like, oh, I'm really attracted to this person, I really want this person, I want to be around this person all the time. But we don't notice that we're not necessarily attracted to this person, we're more dependent on them. And that's when we get into like the conversation of codependency and going down that route as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about how the things that we're attracted to, when it comes out of a place of being unhealed, can actually attract the very thing that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about how what you fear will come to pass. That's what will happen to you.
Yeah.
Because our fears are what we believe, and we act according to our beliefs, and then we actually create the reality that we don't want. So in the area of relationships, how do you understand that with, we've talked about codependent relationships, that if we're not aware of what our attraction is and what we're attracted to, and often there are patterns. It's like things repeat in terms of that maybe the type of person we're attracted to. How can it bring about the very thing we're trying to run away from?
I think that a lot of times we don't realize the thing that we're running away from can also become our comfortability as well. So, for example, let's say you had a really harsh father figure in your life, right? And then you think to yourself like, oh, whoever I marry, whoever I'm going to be with, they're not going to be like this person. And a lot of times our inner child and our subconscious will remember the feeling, but it won't always immediately recognize the action. But the feeling made us feel comfortable. The action is what actually made us scared, right?
Okay.
So, for example, you had a really stern, controlling father. Then you get with a partner who's always very kind and very gentle with you, which is what your inner child, like that's what's going to feel comfortable. That's what you want, right? But then over time, you start to realize that they may not necessarily just tell you what to do, but they make comments that slowly begin to highly influence your decisions because you're already comfortable with being submitted to a certain level to someone. And your inner child actually likes the safety of not having to make decisions. Because it hasn't had to make decisions for basically your entire childhood. Everything was thought out for you. Your career, the classes you wanted to take, the friends you had. So your inner child is actually very uncomfortable with making decisions. So it's happy to have somebody that takes the lead in that sense. And now you've been in a relationship for a year and a half. And you look up one day and you start to notice the clothes you wear don't reflect you. The things you say don't reflect you. The places you go don't reflect you. All of your friends have suddenly disappeared. It's almost like you're completely gone and you don't even know how it happened.
Right.
Simply because you didn't realize that the thing that you were running from was also the thing that you were was also the thing that you were most familiar with and comfortable with.
Yeah.
Which is why I often tell people, when people say like, oh, I never want to date someone or be with someone like my parents, I'm like, that line of thinking is what will lead you directly to them. Because if you have a parent and there was absolutely never one good thing, and this is something I learned, was if there's not one good thing, just one good thing about your parent that you could ever recognize or ever remember, oftentimes, it means that this parent has now been categorized as this person. So now you only avoid what looks like it. You don't learn how to avoid what feels like it, and you don't learn how to avoid what thinks like it. So, for example, for me, with my family life, I grew up with one of my parents being extremely aggressive consistently. Just like anything could set them off, like at any point in time. So I just grew up like kind of like tiptoeing around whatever they needed. I was just kind of like trying to like make myself into that in a sense. So then in one of my relationships I got into, I just kind of did the same thing where like anything could set this person off. And it wasn't to the point where like they were abusive, but it just was creating friction. It would get me in trouble. These arguments would break out. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, it's so crazy because the first time they met me, I was in this relationship, and they're like, you are actually a completely different person than who you were in this relationship. And it was because, again, my inner child wants a fixer, so I can't then be upset when the fixer starts to fix. But the problem with the fixer is fixing me based on the idea of what they think I should look like as a girlfriend, and the idea of what they think I should look like as a wife, based on their vision. When in actuality, Jesus comes in as the healer, and he heals you into what he originally created you to be, right? So it's basically like having someone who's only ever worked on Android phones try to come in and mess around with an Apple. The tech is going to be a little different, right? So I think that that's the big thing for me when I look at relationships and people getting into relationships without healing their inner child, is that we're not made to run away from our childhood. We're actually made to face them, to heal from them, and to overcome them, so that we can start to build within ourselves healthy patterns that we can pass down.
Yeah, it's kind of like facing the demons of our childhood.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crazy thing that like there's so much at stake with our inner healing. I know some people might think it's like just a side issue, or, you know, one day, you know, maybe I'll like look at this stuff, but it's not affecting my life now, but it actually affects probably everything in your life.
Your everyday life.
Your decisions and your choice of a partner, and even our desires. Sometimes we're self-deceived as to why we want certain things. It's because when our child needs are not met, we will find a way to get them met, but in ways that bring more suffering to ourselves, because a partner can never like heal you. There might be some sort of like surface signs of it, but not at the identity level to which God heals us.
Yeah, I think the best way I've ever heard a partner described was, I can't remember the pastor, but I was watching a sermon, and he said that our godly partners are called to be a resource, not a source.
Right.
And I think that that's where a lot of people go wrong in relationships, is they'll look at these marriages, these godly kingdom marriages, and they'll look at the healing the other person received and be like, oh, that's what I need. That's my fix.
Yeah.
When in actuality, I genuinely believe people can receive healing in marriage and healing from their partner, but it has to be used as a resource. If you're depending on it as its source, it will always, always fail. Our source for everything has to be Jesus. My source for peace, my source for joy. Because when we think about it, if not, then your partner's just kind of the next drug.
Yeah.
You know? Like caffeine, coffee.
Yeah.
You hear people all the time say, like, I can't live my life without coffee. Like, it's impossible. Like, our TV, our screens, gluttony, when we look at food, all these things that we are codependent on. A partner is just the next thing. Just the next thing to fantasize about and focus on and go crazy about. When, in actuality, everything all the fulfillment that we think we need from this person God has already supplied it, and he's already waiting to give it to you.
Yeah. Let's talk about our final thing here about counterfeits and how we often try to get our needs met through counterfeits. And when we want something so badly, we there's like scriptural examples of God's people really say wanting a king, and God warning them, don't get a king, this is what's going to happen to you, it's not good. And they demand to have a king, and they get the king, and things are never as good as when they had the judge and God as their leader. And so with relationships, I find many people do get what they want. Yeah, so how does that work, like spiritually, in terms of counterfeits?
Yeah, so counterfeits, it's, just to describe it a little bit, it's this concept, this word that I came up with when I was in a situation where I had a friend and her partner they were going through some things, and she heard the word counterfeit, and it actually came from the fact that there was another girl trying to get in between the relationship that looked like everything that he would need, love, and want. And God said, pray against this counterfeit. Because this is not, because she and him, the reason why they were having so many conflicts was because they weren't the couple on paper. They didn't look right on paper. It was like, culturally, this doesn't make sense. Like, there were so many things there. But God was like, no, I put this together, I called this, and, you know? And so the counterfeit came in looking beautiful, looking amazing, looking like exactly what he needed. But of course, God only knows what we need. And so I find that oftentimes when people go to pray about who their future husband is, they put so much strong desire in like wanting this thing. And we forget that, you know, Satan can actually hear our prayers. So what he will do is he'll send counterfeits. Like that, like I meet so many people where I'm like, be careful where you put your list. Be careful how often you're talking about your list. All that stuff. I'm very careful. Like even when people ask me, I mention 3 things on there. So oftentimes Satan will be like, oh, this is what you're looking for? Perfect. I got the guy. Because if I can't stop you from getting in a godly marriage, in terms of if I can't stop you from getting with a godly spouse, I can stop you from getting into the spouse that you're called to.
Right.
And I don't believe Satan knows the spouse we're called to, but I think he definitely knows who we're not called to. I will say that. After all his time on this earth, I feel like he's figured out a little bit of a formula here. And so oftentimes it'll be like, okay, God, I want someone 6'5", 100% 6'5". God, I would love it if they were a little bit exotic, and I just want someone to make me laugh. I want someone to make me laugh, and I want someone that makes me feel like every day is a fun day. And boom, this guy appears. And then 3 weeks in, you're telling your friends, guys, I literally cannot stop laughing. Every single time we talk, we're just laughing. We're having the best of the best time. 3 months in, guys, we're going to get engaged. 6 months in, guys, we're engaged. We're going to get married. Another 6 months. We're married and life is beautiful. Another 2 weeks. I want to get divorced. And I watched that happen with someone. And it was because they were so focused on this person ticking things off their list that they forgot to actually ask the Father, what is this person actually going to bring that I need? And only God truly knows our needs. So when this counterfeit comes in, this counterfeit is simplifying our wants. It's not even really giving us our wants. Because if you're like, a little tidbit, if you want somebody specifically that's funny and that will always make you laugh and everything, you're probably somebody that struggles with serotonin and dopamine, which then means you want someone that's always going to be around to give you that dopamine boost and serotonin, right?
Interesting.
Just a little chemical thing there. So that's what you actually need. Now, the problem is the kind of dopamine you're seeking is that quick fix, which then also goes away quickly. So that's when we get back into that a lot of codependency talk today. That's when we get back into that codependency, because then guess what? When I'm sad, I used to pray, and now I call this person to make me laugh because it's my quick dopamine. Okay.
Yeah.
When I am angry and I'm going through a bad time, I just need to vent to this person. And you don't even realize that this person isn't really talking about your feelings, isn't trying to help you work through it. They just make you laugh.
Yeah.
But you don't mind it because you're distracted by your quick dopamine boost.
Right.
So I think that counterfeits come in to distract the people of God from what God's actually called them to. And anybody could be a counterfeit. I could be a counterfeit. I pray about that all the time. Like, Jesus, please don't let me become attracted to somebody simply to distract them from who you've called them to be with.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's where I came up with that word, counterfeits. I strongly suggest that people don't just pray against counterfeits, but to really tap into their discernment. There's a person that God's called you to. If you really feel a desire for marriage, there's a person God's called you to. That person is coming. That person is out there. But while you're waiting on that person, block out the noise from the church that you need to be married and the timelines and this, that. Listen, Sarah had a baby at how old? Even I was reading, and like you said, this last thing, but I was reading Luke, and I was reading about Elizabeth. And something that God highlighted to me about John's mother, Elizabeth, was this woman endured. She endured. Because when we think about it, at that point in time, she is in the temple, her husband's in the temple. People are expecting these people to have a baby. And when she's not having a baby, we know how cruel and wicked people can get. The things they say to you, the things they say about you. And she endured and endured and endured. And she's the first example of a baby that we see that will get baptized. She brings forth the son that is going to prepare the way for Jesus Christ, right? And those are things, we need to talk about more. We need to talk more about the people who waited and who endured. And I don't think single at 40 should be seen as a bad thing. Single at 40 should be seen as someone who is waiting and dedicated to the Lord, and who's waiting specifically on their person and not on just any person, because that's how we end up falling deeper in love with counterfeits.
Yeah, so to all the 40-year-olds watching, or any age, whoever is feeling a bit of despair about this, it is so much better to be single at whatever age you're at, even if you're 50 or 60 or 70, and to be invested in your healing and totally invested in your relationship with God than to be in a counterfeit marriage, which will likely, have a lot of sort of resemblance to a taste of hell and the loneliness and all of it that comes with it. Your suffering compounded and patterns repeating. So, but a marriage that is made up of two people who have been healed and are whole can be a taste of heaven on earth. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your insights, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Francis.
Thanks for joining me on The Healed Show. If God spoke to you through today's episode, go to healedfoundations.com. Until next time, God bless.